Today, we will discuss in detail verse 9 of Canto 1, Sutrapatanika Varnanam of the Maharamayana. Welcome, seekers of knowledge, to this deep dive explainer. I am absolutely thrilled to guide you through one of the most profound texts in human history, the Yoga Vashistha Maharamayana. You can think of this session as a masterclass. We're going to decode the ancient Sanskrit, unravel its incredibly deep spiritual philosophy, and most importantly, directly apply it to our modern lives. So, let's dive right in.
Here's the roadmap for our journey today. First, we'll cover the literal meaning and narrative, then move into the philosophical significance. After that, we'll be bridging ancient and modern thought, diving into modern psychology and science, exploring practical life applications, and finally, wrapping up with our conclusion.
All right, let's kick things off with Section 1, Literal Meaning and Narrative. To truly ground ourselves, we have to start with the foundational manuscript of the Yoga Vashistha itself. It's so important to establish the pure authenticity of the material we're decoding. Specifically, we're focusing on the introductory section, traditionally located right around page 3 of this classical Sanskrit compilation. This is literally where the groundwork for the entire monumental epic is laid. The great sage Valmiki is setting the stage here, explaining the fundamental prerequisites you actually need before even approaching this immense body of knowledge.
Let's read the simple, literal English translation of verse 9 together. It reads, "He who has the firm conviction, 'I am bound, let me be liberated,' and who is neither totally ignorant nor fully knowing, is qualified to study this scripture." Take a second to really absorb that. This verse is directly answering a crucial question. Who is this knowledge actually for? The reality? It's not for everyone. It is specifically reserved for someone occupying a very particular, very vulnerable state of mind.
Now, what's really fascinating here is the specific Sanskrit terminology that holds this entire verse together. The first word we need to know is baddha, which means bound, restricted, or chained. In this context, it refers to being trapped in the relentless cycle of worldly suffering and illusion. The second vital term is adhikari, translating to the qualified student or the rightful recipient. The text is plainly telling us that the true adhikari is precisely the one who realizes they are baddha. I mean, think about it. Without realizing you're wearing chains, you're never going to go looking for the key, right? To really grasp the narrative flow, let's look at Valmiki's sequence of events. First, the sage establishes the overarching purpose of the Maharamayana. Second, before jumping into the grand famous story of Prince Rama's disillusionment, he pauses to define who can actually digest this epic. And third, he delivers verse 9. He's essentially putting up a giant mirror to the reader and asking, are you aware of your own ignorance? If you think you already know it all, this text won't help you. And if you don't even care to know, well, it won't help you either.
Moving right along to Section 2, Philosophical and Spiritual Significance.
So the crucial point here is how this verse perfectly maps the journey of consciousness. According to classical Vedic tradition, Maya, the grand illusion, is what keeps us asleep. Now, a person totally asleep doesn't even know they're dreaming. On the other end, a fully awakened master, known as the Tajyanaha, or knower of truth, no longer needs the teachings. The absolute brilliance of verse 9 is that it glorifies this middle state. It's that painful but incredibly beautiful awakening. Having the firm conviction of I am bound is actually your very first glimmer of divine knowledge. It's literally the friction between your ignorance and your emerging wisdom that generates the spark of liberation. If we were to summarize this classical viewpoint, it comes down to this. The recognition of bondage is the very threshold of awakening. True spiritual readiness requires a deep, humble vulnerability. The Yoga Vashistha demands a seeker who is profoundly uncomfortable with their current state of consciousness and possesses a burning desire, a real fire for ultimate freedom.
Let's shift gears now to Section 3, Bridging Ancient and Modern.
It's amazing when we draw a direct comparison here. In the Vedic framework, Maya creates this illusion where we firmly believe we are totally free, when in reality, we are bound by our endless desires and fears. Now, in modern terms, what do we call this? We call them cognitive distortions, those blind spots in our own psychology. Verse 9 perfectly describes the transition from what we call unconscious incompetence, where you literally don't know that you don't know, to conscious incompetence, where you painfully realize your limitations. That ancient adhikari we just talked about, that is exactly what modern educators and therapists call a ready subject.
Let's dig even deeper into this in Section 4, Modern Psychology and Science.
This completely highlights the incredible intersection of ancient text and modern science. Verse 9 is basically describing metacognition, which is your ability to think about your own thinking and realize when it's flawed. In clinical psychology, there's something called the trans-theoretical model of change. It states that a person cannot change a destructive behavior if they are in the pre-contemplation stage, meaning they don't even think they have a problem. Verse 9 is hitting the contemplation stage. I am bound and I need to change. Furthermore, realizing this state actually triggers neuroplasticity. The human brain only begins to rewire itself for higher learning when a state of focused desire and recognized deficit is finally achieved.
What you should really take away from this is quite astounding. The Yoga Vashistha historically predates our modern psychological frameworks regarding cognitive transformation by thousands of years. The ancient rishis understood perfectly that a mind cannot be liberated by external forces. It must first internally diagnose its own bondage. Science is honestly just catching up to the psychological mastery of the Maharamayana.
Okay, let's get highly practical now. Section 5, Practical Life Applications.
Philosophy is useless if you don't live it, right? So here are the actionable teachings you can apply today. First, you need to cultivate brutal self-honesty. Ask yourself, where am I pretending to be free, but I'm actually chained down by my habits, my anxieties, or my ego? Second, embrace the discomfort of not knowing. Verse 9 literally tells us that not being fully knowledgeable is a prerequisite for growth. We have to stop faking expertise. And third, shift from being a passive victim of your circumstances to an active seeker of truth. When you say, let me be liberated, you are taking total radical accountability for your own mental freedom.
Which brings us to our final leg, Section 6, Conclusion and Next Steps.
Merging the literal narrative, the deep philosophy, and our modern scientific understanding, the core takeaway is this: vulnerable awareness of one's own limitations is the sole key to unlocking ultimate liberation. Sage Valmiki is telling us point blank that the greatest obstacle to enlightenment is the delusion that you are already enlightened. True wisdom always begins with a deeply felt, humble declaration of your own bondage.
And this leaves us with a rather provocative thought to chew on. If just acknowledging our chains is what prepares us, how will the mind react when the actual mind-bending nature of the universe begins to be revealed in verse 10? The foundation is set, the student is finally ready, and the true journey is just about to begin. On behalf of the Vedmata AI family, it is our humble request that if you found our presentation informative, please share our video as widely as possible so that the authentic knowledge of Indian Vedic texts can reach the masses. Come, let us all participate in this yagya of knowledge. Har Har.